Most men believe they want her, but if you strip it down, what they actually want is the feeling they get when she chooses them, the attention, the reassurance, the relief. And that's where everything quietly goes wrong. Because desire and validation feel almost identical in the beginning, but they come from completely different places. One pulls you towards someone because you're grounded in yourself. The other pulls you into someone because you're unsure of yourself. And here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. The moment a woman becomes the mirror that confirms your worth, desire begins to fade. Not because you did something wrong, not because she changed, but because validation is heavy and desire needs space to breathe. So in this video, we're going to uncover the hidden difference between wanting someone and needing to feel wanted. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it changes everything. Most men don't confuse desire and validation because they're careless or emotionally immature. They confuse them because in the beginning, they genuinely feel the same. Both trigger excitement, anticipation, and emotional charge. Both make you feel alive, seen, and connected. And when something feels good, the mind rarely questions why it feels good. From an evolutionary and psychological perspective, this makes sense. Being desired by someone signals safety, belonging, and status. Your nervous system interprets attention as confirmation that you matter. So when a woman shows interest, responds warmly, or chooses you, your brain releases dopamine and relief at the same time. The problem is that dopamine can come from two very different sources: authentic attraction or emotional reassurance. Desire is outward-facing. It moves from you toward another person because you are curious, drawn, and emotionally stable within yourself. Validation is inward-facing. It moves from the other person back toward you, soothing doubt, insecurity, or a quiet sense of insufficiency. At first, these two motivations overlap so closely that even emotionally intelligent men struggle to tell them apart. This confusion is reinforced by modern dating culture. Men are subtly taught that attraction is something to earn, and that interest from a woman is proof of personal worth. Compliments, attention, and affection become measurements rather than experiences. Instead of asking, "Do I enjoy her?" the question slowly shifts to, "Do I still matter to her?" And that shift is almost imperceptible. It doesn't feel needy. It feels romantic. It feels invested. But internally, something changes. Desire wants to express itself freely. Validation wants to be secured. One is spacious. The other is tense. Yet most men only notice the difference much later, when attraction starts to cool and anxiety quietly replaces ease. That's why understanding this distinction matters, not as a dating tactic, but as a psychological orientation. Because the moment your interest in someone becomes a way to regulate your self-worth, you're no longer relating to them as a person. You're relating to them as a mirror, and no relationship can stay alive in that dynamic for long. Desire is often misunderstood because it has been romanticized, dramatized, and distorted by insecurity. Real desire is not urgency, it is not intensity, and it is not the fear of losing someone. Genuine desire comes from a place of internal stability. It arises when you are already whole, not when you are trying to fill a gap. At its core, desire is outward-directed curiosity. You are drawn towards someone because their presence feels interesting, alive, and resonant, not because they confirm your value. There is no internal bargaining taking place. You are not watching their reactions to measure your worth. You are simply experiencing them. moment by moment, without needing anything in return. This is why desire feels calm rather than anxious. Even when attraction is strong, there is an underlying sense of ease. You want her, but you are not dependent on her response. You enjoy the interaction itself, not the outcome it might produce. Her interest adds to the experience, but it does not define it. One of the clearest signs of genuine desire is emotional spaciousness. You can tolerate uncertainty. You do not need constant reassurance. If she pulls back slightly, you remain grounded. If she leans in, you enjoy it without clinging. Desire does not collapse under ambiguity because it is not built on fear. Desire is also generous by nature. It wants to express, explore, and share. It does not try to extract certainty or control emotional outcomes. When you are acting from desire, your attention flows outward rather than looping inward. You are present, responsive, and attuned without monitoring yourself or the situation for threats. This is why desire has an attractive quality that cannot be faked. It carries no agenda beyond connection. It does not ask to be proven. It does not rush to secure itself. And paradoxically, the less it tries to hold on, the more naturally it draws people in. Understanding this is crucial because desire cannot coexist with emotional dependency. The moment your interest becomes a way to stabilize your self-worth, desire begins to contract. What remains may still feel intense, but it is no longer free, and freedom is the silent foundation of attraction. Validation rarely announces itself honestly. It doesn't say, "I'm unsure of myself," or "I need you to reassure me." Instead, it disguises itself as care, interest, emotional depth, or even devotion. On the surface, it looks like investment. Internally, however, it functions as a regulator for self-worth. When validation is driving attraction, your attention subtly turns inward. You begin monitoring her reactions more than your own experience. Her tone, her response time, her level of enthusiasm start to matter disproportionately. Small shifts feel larger than they should, not because they are meaningful, but because your emotional balance is tied to them. This is where anxiety quietly enters. You may replay conversations, analyze messages, or feel a vague tension when contact slows down. Nothing dramatic is happening, yet your nervous system behaves as if something important is at stake. That's because it is. What's at stake is not the connection itself, but the feeling of being wanted. Validation also changes the emotional posture of interaction. Instead of expressing interest freely, you begin seeking confirmation. Compliments land differently. Affection becomes necessary rather than enjoyable. Moments of closeness are followed by a need to secure them, to make sure they haven't disappeared. What once felt light now carries weight. One of the most telling signs of validation-driven attraction is the fear of emotional withdrawal. Not rejection in the dramatic sense, but subtle distance, a slower reply, a cancelled plan, a slightly different energy. These moments trigger disproportionate concern because they threaten the role the other person plays in stabilizing your sense of worth. What makes validation difficult to recognize is that it often feels sincere. You may genuinely care. You may feel deeply connected, but the underlying orientation is no longer about meeting another person. It's about being reflected back to yourself in a reassuring way. The relationship becomes less about who she is and more about who you feel like when she wants you. And this is the quiet shift that changes everything. The moment another person becomes responsible for confirming your value, attraction subtly reverses direction. You are no longer standing on your own ground, reaching out from fullness. You are leaning inward, hoping to be held up. And while that may feel intimate at first, it is the exact point where desire begins to erode. The shift from desire to validation is often invisible to the man experiencing it, but it is rarely invisible to the woman on the other side. Even when nothing obvious changes in behavior, something changes in the emotional atmosphere. The interaction begins to feel different, heavier, more charged, less free. When desire is present, the energy between two people feels open and spacious. There is curiosity without pressure and interest without expectation. But when validation enters, that openness contracts. The interaction becomes subtly directional. Instead of two people meeting, one person is now seeking something from the other. Women tend to sense this not through conscious analysis, but through emotional attunement. They feel when attention turns into need, when presence turns into monitoring, and when interest carries an unspoken demand. It is not about a specific action or mistake. It is about the underlying emotional posture. At this point, a quiet burden emerges. She may not be able to name it, but she feels responsible for how he feels about himself. Her responses carry weight. Her moods seem consequential. And without intending to, she becomes the regulator of his emotional state. This is where attraction begins to fade. Attraction requires polarity, not dependency. When a man is grounded in his own sense of worth, his desire flows outward and invites connection. When he begins to lean on her for reassurance, that polarity reverses. She is no longer responding to his presence. She is managing his need. This is why interest often cools without a clear reason. From the man's perspective, he is being attentive, open, and emotionally available. From her perspective, the interaction has lost its ease. What once felt mutual now feels slightly demanding. What once felt alive now feels subtly constrained. The critical point is this: desire thrives in freedom, not obligation. The moment a woman feels emotionally responsible for a man's sense of worth, desire has nowhere to breathe. It doesn't disappear dramatically, it withdraws quietly, and by the time it becomes visible, the shift has already been felt. One of the reasons validation is so difficult to recognize is because it often wears the language of romance. Modern dating culture tends to equate emotional intensity with depth, urgency with passion, and attachment with love. As a result, behaviors rooted in insecurity are frequently mistaken for emotional maturity. Validation-driven attraction often shows up as early intensity. Strong declarations, rapid emotional closeness, and a sense of immediacy can feel meaningful, even profound. But intensity is not the same as intimacy. Intensity seeks relief. Intimacy allows time. One tries to secure something quickly. The other unfolds without pressure. This confusion is reinforced by cultural narratives that frame emotional vulnerability as proof of connection. Sharing fears, wounds, and insecurities early on can look like openness, but when it happens, before trust and stability are established, it often functions as a bid for reassurance. Instead of deepening attraction, it quietly shifts emotional responsibility onto the other person. Validation also disguises itself through overinvestment. Excessive availability, constant communication, and the need to stay emotionally synchronized are often justified as care or commitment. In reality, they frequently reflect an underlying fear of distance. The connection becomes less about shared experience and more about maintaining emotional proximity at all costs. What makes this especially deceptive is that none of it feels manipulative. It feels sincere. The man genuinely believes he is being romantic, expressive, and emotionally present. But beneath the surface, the relationship is being asked to carry more weight than it can sustain. It is being used to stabilize self-worth rather than to explore connection. This is why relationships built on validation often start fast and fade quietly. The early intensity creates a sense of closeness, but it also accelerates emotional dependency. Over time, the pressure to maintain that intensity becomes exhausting. What once felt flattering begins to feel burdensome. True romance is spacious. It allows desire to move freely without demanding proof. It grows through shared presence, not emotional urgency. When validation masquerades as romance, attraction is slowly replaced by obligation. And obligation, no matter how gently expressed, is the enemy of desire. Relying on validation may feel harmless in the moment, but over time, it carries a quiet, psychological cost. When your sense of worth depends on how another person responds to you, stability becomes impossible. Your emotional state is no longer anchored internally. It rises and falls with attention, availability, and reassurance. This creates a constant low-grade tension in relationships. Even during moments of closeness, there is an undercurrent of fear. The mind watches for signs of withdrawal, change, or loss. Instead of being present, you are managing outcomes. Instead of enjoying connection, you are protecting yourself from uncertainty. Over time, this erodes self-respect, not in obvious ways, but subtly. You may notice yourself compromising boundaries, tolerating dynamics that don't feel right, or over-explaining your intentions. Each small concession reinforces the idea that your value must be maintained through effort rather than embodied naturally. Validation also distorts attraction itself. When being wanted becomes a need, relationships turn into emotional transactions. Attention feels like relief. Distance feels like threat. The other person becomes a source of regulation rather than a partner in connection. This dynamic breeds dependency, not intimacy. Perhaps the most damaging cost is the loss of agency. When your emotional balance is outsourced, you become reactive. Your mood, confidence, and sense of direction are shaped by external feedback. This makes it difficult to lead, to remain grounded, or to walk away from situations that no longer serve you. And the irony is this: the more you seek validation to feel secure, the less secure you become. The very strategy meant to protect you slowly undermines your confidence. Attraction fades, anxiety grows, and what once felt like connection begins to feel like emotional labor. Living on validation is exhausting because it was never meant to be your foundation. Self-worth cannot be borrowed. It has to be generated from within. Until that shift happens, relationships will continue to carry a weight they were never designed to hold. The shift from validation to desire does not begin with changing behavior. It begins with changing orientation. As long as another person is responsible for stabilizing your sense of worth, desire cannot fully return. Recalibration starts the moment you take that responsibility back. This means learning to tolerate uncertainty without trying to resolve it immediately. Desire is comfortable with not knowing where things are going. Validation is not. When you stop demanding emotional certainty, you create space, both within yourself and within the connection. And space is what allows attraction to breathe. Recalibration also requires self-reference. Instead of asking how you are being perceived, you return to how you are experiencing the interaction. Do you feel open or contracted, grounded or tense, curious or vigilant? These signals matter more than any external feedback. because they tell you whether desire is present or whether validation has taken the lead. Another key shift is allowing interest without attachment. You can want someone deeply and still remain emotionally sovereign. Wanting does not require clinging. Attraction does not require securing. When your desire is free of need, it becomes naturally confident because it is not trying to protect itself. As this internal posture changes, your presence changes with it. There is less urgency, less over-explaining, less monitoring. You show up as you are, rather than as someone trying to be chosen. And that subtle difference is felt immediately. Desire responds to grounded presence, not emotional effort. This is not about detachment or emotional distance. It is about emotional independence. You are available, but not dependent. Interested, but not invested in outcomes. Open, but not leaning. From this place, connection becomes something you share, not something you need. When validation no longer drives your attraction, desire returns to its natural state. Calm, spacious, alive. And paradoxically, it is from this grounded position that you become most capable of genuine intimacy, because you are no longer asking the other person to carry what only you can hold. Desire and validation are easy to confuse because they often arrive together, but only one of them can sustain attraction over time. Desire moves freely. Validation weighs things down. One invites connection. The other asks to be carried. When you no longer need someone to confirm your worth, your presence changes. There is less urgency, less tension, less fear beneath the surface. You are no longer negotiating for reassurance. You are simply showing up, grounded in yourself. This is the quiet truth most men never hear. Attraction does not grow through effort. It grows through stability, through the ability to remain whole in the presence of uncertainty, through wanting without needing to secure. The moment you stop asking, "Do I matter to her?" something fundamental shifts. You become less reactive, more centered, more real. And from that place, desire can exist without pressure on both sides. Not every connection will last. Not every attraction will deepen. But when desire, rather than validation, guides you, the outcome no longer defines you. You remain intact, regardless of where things go. And that is the difference that changes everything. If this resonated, take a moment with it. Let it settle. And if you want to explore these dynamics more deeply, you know where to find the next conversation.